welcome back to the session. We were discussing on the key questions of intellectual property rights and some critical questions about it, the roles and responsibilities of the engineers regarding it. In today's key question, we are going to focus on what is the difference between having a property right such as a patent or a copyright for something one has invented or written, and credit for having invented or written it. So, there is we want to see if there is any difference between these two things. Earlier we were discussed copyright can be inherited, copyright can be transferred also. So, could be the patent after certain years it becomes open. So, is there any difference between having a property right for patent and copyright, and the difference with the credit for someone who has invented or written something? Let us see. So, what we find is that recognition for a recognition for a design work and other innovative technical contributions is manifest in a variety of ways and settings. Suppose naming a device for an individual Jarvik Hurt, or for a group or corporation like NCSNI, Microsoft's new operating system, may reflect the credit for some engineering design. So, even when some device is named for a person, the particular individual need not be the designer or the inventor. So, it could be the name of someone who first felt the need to develop such a device or to collaborate on designing it. So, or the person who was the first clinician to use it, it is out of respect also. So, having a device for someone under someone's name does not always mean the person has invented it. It could be an act of respect also shown to that particular person. So, when an inventor's name goes on the patent, so which may be owned by some other party, but unlike an author's name which is included in a copyrighted work, so whether or not the person author retains the copyright, the inventor's name may or may not appear anywhere except on the patent. So, that is the slight difference, when there is a copyright, the author's name is included in the copyright, and even if it does not remain with the original author, it gets transferred. So, the author's name remains with the the piece of work, the writings, etc. But for the design part, it is only with the for the particular inventor, it is with the patent. It may be the case the many users, the common people, the many users of that invention may not even know the inventor's name. So, what happens the proprietary rights embodied in patents and copyrights work differently. So, from crediting mechanisms that may have no property implications. The patent arrangements that attend industrial sponsorship of university research are independent of criteria for fairly crediting authors and other contributors to a research article. So, when you're talking of patent, which is maybe an like the arrangement between the industry sponsoring some research work, and so that have an independent criteria rather than crediting the authors for the copyrights and all. So, for the research article, so this have two different implications. So that will become more evident like when we talk of the following situation. So, failure to credit the source of a research data. Ramos is the head of a chemical company. As a part of a research and development effort, Ramos offers to provide funding to the chemical department of a major university for research on the removal of poisonous heavy metals like chromium, copper, lead, nickel, zinc from waste streams. In return, the university agrees to give Ramos's company the exclusive rights to any technology developed in the field of water treatment or waste stream management. As compensation, the university will also receive a royalty from the company from the profits resulting from the use of the technology. So, that we find was the understanding between the Ramos's company and the university. At the university, a group of professors led by Polinsky decides to form a company to exploit the technology obtained, except for water treatment and water waste management, that Ramos's company will develop. Meanwhile, while the university is conducting this research, Ramos's company is conducting its own parallel research. Both teams obtain data and performance figures, and Ramos's company freely shares its results with the professors in Polinsky's company. Later, de Pasquale, a professor of civil engineering at the same university, decides to conduct research and publish a paper on sewage treatment technology. He contacts the professors in the chemistry department, who furnish him with data from their tests as well as with data from Ramos's company. De Pasquale is unaware that some of the results come from Ramos's company. De Pasquale is successful in her research, and her article is published in a major journal. The data obtained by Ramos's company are displayed prominently in the paper and make up a major portion of the article. The paper credits the members of the chemistry department, but nowhere mentions the contributions of Ramos's company, even though its funds supported both projects. De Pasquale later learns that Ramos's company was the major contributor to the data in her paper. Is it plagiarism for De Pasquale to publish the data without crediting all of the sources? Why or why not? Is it De Pasquale's obligation to give full credit to Ramos's company for its data? What if any action should Ramos take after discovering the article? What if any additional information would you want before deciding what to do if you were in Ramos's position? So, if this is the case, let us see how it goes through, because there are 2-3 issues in it. First, what we find over here, so Ramos is the head of the chemical company. So as a part of his research, what they have done, they offers to provide funding to the chemical department of a major university, and in return, like for the research on removal of poisonous heavy materials, metals from waste streams, and the university agrees to give Ramos's company the exclusive rights. When you're talking of this exclusive rights of any technology developed in the field, we are talking of like they will give the maybe the this Ramos's company will be able to patent it also, because that is the understanding between the company and the like university. So side by side what we find is Polinsky, the professors, they also decide to form a company and to exploit the technology except for water treatment, because that is what they have got an understanding with Ramos, and this company will be developing. So what we find over here, two things: even if the chemical engineering department is developing the technology, they are not taking the credit of it. The credit goes to the Ramos's company, because they have funded the research for it. And again, when we find like Polinsky's company, they have developed some company for using the technology for not for water treatment, for something else. So what happens, like meanwhile, like both when they share the data with each other, then when DePasquale asks for the data from this civil engineering department, so when it comes to like sharing the data with DePasquale, it is responsibility of the chemical engineering department, chemical department professors. Like we are not very sure over here, like whether like they have asked the Ramos's company for permission before sharing their data with DePasquale, because whatever Ramos's company have freely shared the data with the Polinsky's company was for the purpose of the research that maybe they were collaborating for. But before sharing this data with others, like to maybe of the same university but from a different department working on something, a different purpose, whether they were like taken the permission of Ramos's company or not is not mentioned over here, but that is an essential part, like whether this can be done. Now before we have discussed the cases also, like whether, like in which cases it is not required for a company to take the permission of the copyright owner, and maybe if it is for education purpose only and for academic purpose only. But here we do not know exactly for what purpose like DePasquale will be using her technology. Is it only for the purpose of a research paper, or it will have some greater financial implication later on also in terms of money making. So these points have not been mentioned in this particular case till here. So before sharing this data, this like audit should have been done. So what we find over here, so because DePasquale is unaware of the result which is coming from the Ramos's company, she has not like credited for this mention the contribution of Ramos's company. Here, like in her defense, we can tell, like though the data was claimed to be the Ramesses company, but again the actually the chemical engineers of chemical department professors also had contribution in this data, and like then how it comes to be the Ramesses company. But that will not be a very substantial argument, because what we find that the Ramesses company were doing parallel work regarding this thing, and they were like shared this result with the professors in Polinsky's company. So it was and also it was the major sponsor, it is a fund was there from these two, like from the Ramesses company. So what we find, like it would have been a more responsible act on part of de Pasquale to like find out whether the whatever data has been shared by the department, like the chemical department, was a part of their research only, because it is not that maybe we don't know here like whether de Pasquale knew like the same paper, like whether she was knowledgeable about the fact like the chemical engineering department was doing some collaborative research with the Ramesses company. If it was known, then it is a part of the de Pasquale's responsibility to find out whether all the data were from there, to like investigate further into it, was there all the data was from the chemical department only, or they have shared with some like Ramesses data also, and in that case what was the part of the responsibility of de Pasquale. And like because it is required that the original like who have collected the data and worked on it gets a proper credit for the contribution. So these things were not very clear from here, but definitely like we need to, here it is talking of the plagiarism for de Pasquale. So to publish the data without crediting all of the sources, we have to see the implication of it, and if you want to really understand the total implication of it, we have to like go through the level of ignorances also. But after all, like when we are starting with any kind of work, so it is required like we are proactive enough to inquire into every specific facets of it, so that like when we later go on developing on it, it is not taken to be as plagiarism. Now plagiarism itself has its own condition, like how much of it is similar, whether what we find over here is the like the major portion like this Ramesses data is maybe forms a major portion of the report. So this small negligence or ignorance, however we may talk it from de Pasquale's perspective, may lead it to an act of plagiarism. Now we will move on to the key question 5, which talks of, like, on the one hand it is not invented here attitude, which disregards advances made outside of its own organization, so which is widely blamed for slowing advances in quality and safety. On the other hand, legal specifications of copyrights and patents and other intellectual property protections are intended to limit the use of that others can make of one's designs. What are the fair and prudent means of learning from others? What are the ethical issues in learning from the innovation of others? This is a very pertinent question which follows from the case, as you have seen. Then, like, if we are talking always of like intellectual property protections, copyrights and patents, then how others can learn, how the knowledge is going to spread, and like what are the ethical issues involved in learning from the innovation of others. So these, like, maybe we find like this is a question which puts us as a crossroad. On the one side we are talking of protecting our intellectual property rights, and the other side we are talking of knowledge dissemination and learning from others. So if these are appearing to be contrasting in nature, so then how do we build a bridge between these two concepts? Let us see. So these talks of like trustworthiness. So first we talk of like benchmarking. So benchmarking is referring to an competitor's devices or publicly available information before one starts designing or manufacturing a new product for oneself. So when you are doing a benchmarking, we are trying to learn from the positives of others and also negatives faced by others and improve our own things accordingly. So as a process of it, like sometimes what has happened, our competitors' products are purchased, examined and analyzed. So benchmarking may or may not involve copying anything from the competitor. So a company may wish to benchmark to learn for many things, like beyond the competitor's design, its marketing strategy, its competing products, so like cost of manufacture, and to charge like with some new manufacturing process. So how the company, benchmark company, is going to like come to the market and they can produce a competitive product at a much lower price. So it could be more of questions related to strategy of marketing and pricing strategy, etc., rather than the focus being only on the design part. We have a term which is called reverse engineering. So one means, as you've learned, is benchmarking. The other could be to do a reverse engineering. So this is mainly for the knowing the technology or design part of it. So it talks of disassembling the product and testing ways to destroy it. So reverse engineering sometimes help us to show like what the competitor has done in order to copy or improve on their competitors' work. For example, engineers might photograph and enlarge the picture of silicon chips to learn about the architectural features of the chips, so such as whether it uses one function twice or two different functions once. So like these type of things. So widely accepted ethical limits that are generally recognized in benchmarking and reverse engineering, so are, rather than respecting legal property rights, are commonly like to be trustworthy and the constraints and the means for one can use to obtain information, and rather than on the nature of the information, on the use that one makes of it. So, how you got that information? What was your means to, like, what was used to obtain information? So, if we, like we discussed a case earlier where we find, like, maybe the surgeon who has maybe developed some good ways of treating people, and does not want to share that knowledge with the outside world community in the same, like in the group of doctors. So whether another doctor can do, like, bribe the operation theater attendant, or the or can, like, do electronic eavesdropping, etc., to know about the technique, but that is totally unethical. So what we find, the word ethics here is more connected with the constraints and the means one can use to obtain information. Like, there we find that person went through an indirect route, like not asking the person directly to share his or her knowledge, but going to his assistant or putting some, like, voice recognition, secret cameras, etc., which is not very desirable. Learning and using the information obtained through benchmarking and reverse engineering are not, like, restricted as long as one not has used any unfair means to learn it. So the process adopted in learning from that source is more important rather than the message itself. So whether you have taken any unfair means to learn from others and use their information, then it is unethical. So we will see by the guidelines given by Texas Instruments Office, so which are regarding which are acceptable benchmarking practices. So asking customers about the equipment and prices of TI competitors, asking employees of well-run businesses that would not compete with TI about their practices, searching for information through public resources, reading books and publications describing other companies, encouraging other TI engineers who come in contact with the customers to be observant of practices that might be useful to TI. So we find, like, the whether, like, how do we benchmark is asking customers about equipments and prices. So asking competitor employees of like well-run businesses which is not a direct competitor about their practices. So searching of information through public resources, reading of books, these are going to give, like, immense knowledge and guidelines, so, and of the useful benchmarking practices. So what we find, like, when you're talking of benchmarking, we have to, like, gather information about the company and its moves from its competitors, maybe from other employees of other organizations. So we have to take a, like, very 360-degree approach, and the focus of benchmarking is not only the design per se, but it is focused on the, like, the marketing, production and marketing and the strategy relevant for it, for the product involved. It is not the design per se. When you're talking of reverse engineering, it is about reversing the design to find out, doing the, like, if it requires these steps to destroy it and go back to the core of it, then these were the steps that was added, which was to the core to come back to today's design. That's how that equation is done. So when you're talking of reverse engineering, it is more design focused. when you are talking of like benchmarking, it is seeing it as more of a product, and it's placing in the like the mind of the people and in the frame of the other competitors, and for that we can do a competitor analysis to find out where our company stands. Thank you. We'll come back with more critical questions in the next session. Thank you.